Well, welcome back to the True Roots podcast, where men find their true identity in Christ through surrender and obedience. We're excited here to be here for episode 3, and today we have Mike Stans.
Dude, these are awesome. I don't even know what to do with my
Yeah,
hands.
I know. It's like we're gonna have them up here, I think, the whole time. And Dan and I aren't dressed the same as two bald men with red beards, so this episode you might be able to tell the difference between both of us, which will be
That
pretty
was
sweet.
the goal, at least, right?
Yeah. We're becoming like a married couple that dresses the same, and I don't think we
too
want to be
soon.
there. Yeah,
Too
too
soon.
soon. Way too soon. Way too soon. So, well, hey, this episode is about ownership, and I wanted to start this off with a story about what God asked me to do after I came back to Him at the Word Retreat, and so just wanted to talk to you about that a little bit. Is when I came back, and you know a little bit of my story. When I came back to the Lord and surrendered and said, you know, you have everything, one of the first things He told me to do is you got to own up to what you did.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Sounds like God.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like God. And I didn't want to do it, didn't know how to do it. And I had previously asked for forgiveness from my ex-wife. But every time I had asked for forgiveness, it was hoping that I would get her back. Like, that's what I wanted. So I was going to ask for forgiveness.
You had like an expectation attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it wasn't true repentance.
Yeah.
And so this time, God asked me to write a letter. And when He asked me to do that, He said, in this, you need to give her the option to never read this. Like, she doesn't have to read this. She can throw it away. And so He was very clear in that. And so I wrote a letter of just all the things that I had done and the mistakes that I had made and apologized for them.
How long was the letter?
It was pretty long. Yeah, it was a pretty long letter. Good call. Yeah, it was a long one, and I folded it up, went to her house, and just said, "Hey, God asked me to write this for you," and
what was your guys' relationship status at that point?
really poor at that point. We were separated. We weren't divorced yet. Divorce came, I think, 4 months after that, but we were in the process, and but her even being willing to let me come over and hand her the letter was super gracious, and so I gave her that letter and told her that she could grab it, rip it up, throw it away, do whatever she wanted to do with it, but I needed to apologize for the things that I had done and the issues I had created, the stuff that I had caused for our son, all of the different things that I had done. And to her credit, she read it and said thank you for it and all of that, but it was a step of trusting the Lord with the process and taking ownership of the mistakes that I had made. And I think as men, a lot of times it's really easy for us to look at the other side. My mentor always says to look at your own side of the street, clean your own side of the street. And for the longest time in that divorce process, it was her. Like, she's the reason. And it's funny because I could have looked at my stuff and the things that I was doing. I mean, you know my story.
Yeah.
It's like, I wasn't clean. Like,
Yeah.
there was a big plank here and a little speck there, and I still wanted to blame and complain and all those things. And that step of ownership was really the beginning of me being able to change, because I was now looking at the truth of the things that I had done,
Yeah.
and that I could only get free from Jesus.
Yeah.
And only get free from owning up to those things that I had done. So
Yeah.
just wanted to start there, and we'll let you
Yeah.
tag team off that.
No, I think I just want to ask more questions. 'Cause-
Yeah.
So, you gave her the letter with the, basically like, it doesn't matter the result of this.
Yeah.
Like, this was just me obeying the Lord.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't what you said to her maybe, but like, that was the reason
That
you
was,
did
yeah.
it. And I'm curious do you remember what the next, because I find when we obey the Lord, like, He just keeps asking us to do more things. Do you remember what the next thing was that He asked you to do after that?
Well, I don't remember exactly the next thing, at least not right
Yeah.
now in this moment. But I do remember that He had me do more.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that was the first step
Yeah.
of taking ownership.
Yeah.
And so it was actually, I think, about a week after our divorce became final, I went on this men's retreat. And we were doing some breathwork stuff. And in the breathwork session that we did, God revealed something to me. I had a conversation with a man at the retreat, and he was like, yeah, my ex-wife and I work together really well. We do this with our kids. We don't talk bad about each other, all of that. I said, yeah, I don't do that either. There's only one thing that I'll say is, like, if my son ever says, Dad, why don't you come home? I would always say, I would if I could. I would if I could. And he goes, you got to stop doing that. Why?
Yeah.
I don't understand. He goes, because you're putting all the blame on her when you say that. It's like, ooh. And so it started to kind of resonate. And then we were doing this breathwork session. I remember I was laying on my back. We're doing all this breath work, just trying to.
Is this going to work?
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? And God was very clear, and He goes, "It's time to write her another letter." Like, what? So yeah, you need to own up to that, tell her that, and so I did. I think this one was in a text message. I don't think I actually wrote out a letter, but I just said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I've been saying this to Owen, and I didn't even realize what I was doing and putting the blame on you, and it wasn't your fault. I need you to know it wasn't your fault, and I'm sorry that I did that."
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know what that did for her, but to be able to say freely that it wasn't her fault. I don't think I was even in that place when I wrote the first letter. I think when I wrote the first letter, it was an act of obedience, and I knew that I had made mistakes, but there was still this, I don't know, I just wasn't in that place yet. And so as you start to be obedient with one thing, then you're going to be obedient with the next thing, and you're going to be obedient with the next thing. So I don't remember the exact right after thing with that, but I do remember that was another step in that process as we went on.
I wonder if we've I don't want to sound like, man, this is it. This is the thing with the definitive statement. But I do wonder if we've stumbled on like a principle of ownership that is it is it's not a checkbox thing. It's a one time and done. It is a state of being that like you cannot just give up on.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to, once you enter into a position of like, I'm going to have ownership over what I do and the impact of the things I do, what I believe and the impact of what I believe, what I think and the impact of what I think, you can't stop doing that and still say you have ownership, right? Like it. And what's difficult about that for a Christian is that like God, the standard in God's eyes is holiness and perfection, right? Like that's the direction that we're supposed to be moving. And so it just never stops. Yeah. Like God's never going to stop asking us to take ownership for things. And God also says that we are not victims, right? Like the Bible, nowhere in the Bible does it say we are victims of sin. It says all have sinned. Like we are the agents of that thing. And as a result, we're separated from God. And like, even just in that like acknowledgement, we have to take ownership over our own condition. Mm-hmm. It's not like, oh, I inherited this. God, it's not my fault. God puts the ownership on us to go, no, it's like you did those things. And so there's just, even in the like relationship with the Lord, there has to come to the Lord, you have to take ownership genuinely. Like you can think you did, right? Because you said something, but you've never actually like surrendered your life, right? Which is the full act of like ownership over the things. Like, God, these are all my things. Yeah. Here you go. I'm giving them to you. I own, like, here they are. I don't know. I wonder if we have, like, if that is a principle of ownership, this like ongoing versus just a one time and done.
Yeah. I think it absolutely is. And one thing I was thinking about while you were talking is obedience and ownership go hand in hand.
For sure.
Because we can say we own it, and we can own it here, but we have to walk in obedience and actually walk into that ownership. Like I could have said, hey, I messed up. I made these mistakes. I did this. Maybe tell a buddy.
Yeah.
But never admit them to the person that I hurt.
Well, you think about, I was just talking about this yesterday. I had to change my water heater. Yeah. Which costs money. And I had to like figure out what the most efficient way to do that was, like which water heater I wanted. It took up a bunch of mental space that I didn't really care for it to, and time. Like I had to do it. And unless I wanted to pay a bunch of money for someone else to do it, exorbitant amount. And I was talking to the guy that helped me do it. And I was talking about how when I used to rent a house, we had our water heater go out, and I just called the landlord, and he came, paid for it, fixed it, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But like, it was because he owned the house. But I own the house now, and so there's this like I have to be responsible for. If there's no action because of ownership, then like you have to question the level of ownership,
Yeah.
right? Like if I own something, do I have a care for to like steward the thing, right? Like there's different ways to own stuff too.
Yeah.
Which we could probably talk about. And it's like, what is God's way of owning the things that he's given us to own, right? Like in all the realms of our life.
Yeah. And we have to walk in things. I think with that too is God will bring things. He wants to walk with us, right?
Yeah.
We don't just go to God and he takes care of all of our stuff. It's like he wants to walk with it. Like you're talking about owning the house. You own the house. You've got to do it. We're this person that he's created. We have to own who we are. And it doesn't just excuse all of the stuff that we've done when God says you're forgiven.
Right.
It's like it does, right? Like we are a new creation and he's going to have you walk in that to become the new creation. I mean, we talked about the belief matrix stuff where the dispelling lies, replacing with truth, all of that. It's like, that's a process. Sanctification is a process. And I think that's where the ownership piece of things come in, is that we're never going to be perfect this side of heaven. And so we can say, hey, I'm forgiven, and just not worry about anything.
Yeah.
And then just be.
Yeah.
Or we can say, hey, I'm forgiven, and that means that there's going to be some cost here. There's going to be, I mean, I didn't forgive myself.
Right.
Right? Jesus did it. And so now I'm going to need to be obedient to what he asked me to do and then start walking in that. And it is this continual process. I heard someone, a mentor of actually our former boss, I heard him say that obedience accelerates. And it was interesting when I heard him say that, but I think that really is what ownership and obedience does. I think a lot of times, and maybe I'm going a different direction here with it, but a lot of times when we are walking with the Lord, the reason that growth takes so much time is because we're unwilling to be obedient and take ownership of the things that he asks us to.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. It's like we want what God promises without what God asks.
Yeah.
Which isn't the way God describes anything in Scripture. And not everyone, it's not fair. A lot of people, the narrative is, well, there's grace. And it's like, absolutely.
Yeah, but Paul, don't take advantage of grace. I guess.
But like, there is a principle and a formula at work that like, when we obey, there is blessing. Mm-hmm. And our disobedience, our sin, only separates, right? Like Jesus has come and closed the gap. But at the same time, like when we sin, are moving ourselves away from the Lord. Mm-hmm. And if we want the things that God has promised, we have to like surrender and move ourselves back into proximity. Yeah. And it's like, but we don't want to do that work because it's either feels vulnerable or it feels like an acknowledgement of something we're not willing to acknowledge, or because it's hard. And instead we just want to sit there and go like, God, give me more of you. Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why aren't you doing what I asked? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, okay, I should probably take some ownership over that. I was thinking about my relationship with my wife, and we have different love languages, which I think is pretty common. Yeah. And there's a tension there that like, so Rachel's primary love language is words of affirmation, which is probably the last one for me. And so I kind of suck at like words of affirmation for her. And there is also the truth that she has some levels of insecurity through different relationships she's had in her life, to where even when I do say some things, she doesn't hear it that way because she hears what she thinks about that, and it kind of overrides it. And so what I end up doing is going, well, that's ridiculous that you feel that way, because I say things to you and you don't even hear them, right? But my goal like I would acknowledge my goal in my marriage is for her to know that she knows that she's loved by
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. 100%.
Like to never have to doubt that. And if she's doubting it, I can blame her for it, which is way easier because then she has to do the work to fix the problem.
Yeah. Yep.
Or I can go, you know what? Like, I love this woman the way she is. How can I assure her? Like, how can I meet her where she's at? Right? Like, I'm clearly falling short in a way that she needs from me. How can I like get there? And so I've like, this is very present and real for me right now. Like, I'm just like, I think I have not taken ownership over that piece of our marriage where it's like, oh, we have different love languages. That's her problem because I do it sometimes and she doesn't receive it or she can't hear it or whatever. And I just blame it back on her instead of, and I say, well, I loved her these ways, and she's like, but I don't feel loved sometimes. And it's like, well, it's your fault. And it's like, no, I think I have been realizing the last couple of weeks, no, that's my fault. I can do that differently.
Yeah.
So, it's like, but it's easier to make it her fault.
Oh, certainly is. And justification is not ownership. So we're going to throw that out there. I was really good at it too. Still can be. We were talking before the show, and obviously our stories are different, but when I was looking at taking ownership of stuff, the thing that God kept bringing up was, well, did you love her like I love the church? Did you love her like I love the church?
Yeah, the standard is very high.
Yeah, extremely high. And, I think a lot in churches, we like to look at that first part, submit to your husbands.
Or it just stops there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, we forget the verse right above it that says submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then we forget everything underneath that said, well, what woman wouldn't want to submit to a husband that lays his life down for her?
Yeah.
Not many,
I mean, just principle of humans, like who doesn't want to like come under someone's authority in a situation where they're serving them?
Yeah.
It's like, where are you helping me go? Like, let's do it,
Yeah.
And that narrative in and of itself is an incomplete narrative when it gets like hung up on that first piece, the wives submit to your husbands, because like that is a significant ask.
Yeah.
But the ask of the husband for the wife is more significant.
Yeah.
Right? And they are mutually dependent on one another. And so it's just like, it is easy for each party to like point the finger at the other party's responsibility and role and go, well, why aren't you doing that?
Yeah.
But like the things that Jesus asks of us are radical. Mm-hmm. Like for a husband, what is it, what does it look like to lay down your life for your wife? What does that actually look like? Not just the idea of it. Oh yeah, I get it. Like she's more important. It's like, no, what does that mean? That means your schedule's not your own.
Yeah.
That means the job you have isn't your job. Yeah. It's like your guys's. It means that the things she feels should matter more than the things you feel. It means a lot of really like difficult things.
Yeah.
And until you and I stop intellectually assenting to ideas that Jesus says and start going, wait a second, like, Lord, I don't think I'm doing that. What does this mean for me? And like, how do I actually do that? Then it gets real. Then it's like, oh, okay, do I trust you enough in this? Like, then you have to take ownership over all the ways you fall short, because it's easy to not take ownership too when you like, I don't have to when I put my standard as like my peers.
Yeah, your standard. Yeah.
As a human standard. But then when I sit back and I go, well, Jesus' standard is like this, then there's like all kinds of opportunities to take ownership, because like, oh shoot, I'm way down here and I'm supposed to be way here. The gap is so big. And then, the ownership, I love it because the ownership is just, Jesus, I'm not there. Will you help me?
Yep.
And then Christians, I think a lot of us think we have to be these like well put together people, Christians. But the cool thing is Christians are actually supposed to be the only people in the world who are okay not being okay because Jesus has been enough, right? And it's like, that's like the ownership that we have is like what you just described with your wife. I am not, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I want to do this differently. Owned.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then like, God, would you help me?
Yeah.
Owned. Done with
We
that.
can be
and then
vulnerable in
continue
that.
to
'Cause
own.
yeah,
you know?
it's not on, he's going to help you
Yeah.
and our standard is his. So the comparison thing that you bring up is interesting because I think for one, we can always find someone that we think is worse than us. We can always find someone that we think is better than us.
Crushing life.
Yeah, there's always going to be this gap. And so if our standard is that, then we're either going to be super prideful or super anxious and super in shame. Because we can't, because you can't, you're going to have one side or the other. And that's not the standard. It's not the standard. And the standard is Jesus and being able to walk in that. And so because you're a married man with 5 kids, I thought that I would just ask you,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you? Like, what does it look like to lay down your life for your wife? And how have you been doing that in, we'll just use the word practical ways. Like, how have you done that to show her that you care and that you are laying your life down?
Well, I just acknowledged that I have not been great at it in
Yeah,
the specific
this is
ways
fair.
of
This
love
is fair.
languages. So but I do know that a lot of things have had to go in my life that weren't inherently bad things, but there wasn't capacity for them, or there wasn't like an alignment in our lives for those things. One of the big ones is sports for me. Rachel, like, I used to work in sports.
Yeah.
You know, I played college basketball and then I went and worked in sports. So it was like college athletics, WNBA, Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Like, my life was centered in a way around sports. And now I don't even watch them at all.
Yeah.
I used to watch something every day, right? And she didn't care for him. She kind of looks at him the way I looked at The Bachelor. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
what's the point? It's just a bunch of useless information about people you don't know. And that's exactly how she feels about sports. She's like, what's the point? It's a bunch of useless information about people you don't know.
Yeah.
And you know, that's fine. That's her opinion. But like, there's a tension for her, good or bad.
Yeah.
Anytime that I was like consuming that, she just was like, this is a waste of his time. Why doesn't he use his time differently? And I felt like, you know, like it had slowly gone away. And then recently Lord was like, just give it up. Like, let it go, you know? And so like now it's just gone. And that is crazy for me to think about because of where I used to be working in it. I used to like watch a lot of it. I used to talk about it all the time. I did fantasy sports, like all the things. And like none of it. I couldn't tell you what's going on with like anything.
Yeah.
And so that's one, like being outdoors. I used to like backpack and hike all the time. And I still get to do it, but it's way less because the burden goes on to my wife to like watch our kids and be with our kids if they can't go on the thing that I'm doing. And, you know, she like, it's not fair. And she wants me to be able to do those things. But at the same time, like if I'm sitting there always asking her and she has to say no all the time, like that's putting it back on her rather than taking ownership and recognizing like, oh, this is an unfair burden. This isn't the season for this. My kids are older and they can go or whatever. So that's changed dramatically. I've had to surrender that to the Lord of like, God, at some point, if this is a good thing, you'll give it back to me.
Yeah.
And I'd say the last one is there's probably 2. One is relationships with women. Like it's just not a thing, you know, like in the same way. Like I don't have a woman who's a friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not wise.
No, it's totally unwise.
Yeah.
And I also spend no one-on-one time with women. Like I just, out of respect and care for her. And that used to not be the case. Like, and to my, I think looking back, a little bit of like shame in the unawareness of myself with women, of just like the flirtatiousness of my character and just being unaware of the fact that like, of what I was doing to them in relationship.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not possible for you to have a friend that's a woman and not have one person feel a certain way at some point, right? Like, it's just, you can argue with me about it if you want to, but I'm pretty
It's
confident
true.
on that.
I agree with you 100%.
And then the last one I'll say is schedule. My time is not my time. It's our time. And it's still attention. You know, it's like you work an 8-hour day and you're supposed to get a break in there, right? But like, I'm now, you know, self-employed, and the break is like taking time from her, right? She's home with our kids, and it's like, hey, can you ask me about that? Because that time I could have had you home helping, and it's like, well, no, this is my right, you know, like to take this break. She's like, I don't have a break. And so there's this like fight that we've had multiple times about like time.
Yeah.
And so it's my schedule is not my schedule. And it's like, hey, Rach, like I want to work out, or I want to like go for a prayer walk, or I want to go see this person during this block of time that you're watching the kids while I'm supposed to be working, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is that okay? And like, she wants to give me those things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she doesn't want to feel like I'm taking them from her.
100%. Yeah.
And so that's definitely another one that I've had to just own, like, okay, I don't just get to decide this for me.
Yeah.
Like, this is our decision together.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I'm gonna have you talk a lot in this episode, because there's just a couple questions, or one question that I have from that is, as you're talking, there's things in there. Well, pretty much all of them are things that you enjoy,
Totally.
right? So you like doing those things. And just thinking about some of the men that are watching this episode, like, well, I got to give up all the things that I like. You know, I can't do any of these things. And I understand it, right?
Yeah.
But I know that the Lord, when He asks us to do something, like lay down our lives for our wives, or pick up our cross and follow Him, there is a reward. Like there is something good that comes from it.
Right.
And so, and it may not, I mean, sometimes it may not, like pick up your cross, follow me, and you follow Him to death. Like it may be death, right? And there's a reward in heaven. However, like you said, with obedience and blessing and all of that, that He brings those things. It may not be financial. It may not, we're not a prosperity gospel thing here at all. Like God brings blessing in so many, He is the blessing.
Totally.
But I wanted to know what you've benefited from, not you benefit. How has your marriage benefited, and how has your relationship benefited from you choosing to do those things, and what has it caused for you and Rachel and your closeness, your unity, all of that, and your relationship with the Lord?
Yeah. I think at the heart of it with my relationship to the Lord first
Yeah.
is like, I do those things because God's told me this is how I'm supposed to live. And so to the point you made earlier about obedience accelerates, like when I trust the Lord with what He says is best, which is the laying down of my life, I never miss the thing that I thought I needed.
That's good.
I think I'm afraid I will. And there's even times like it's not like a clean, laying down. It's like I'm holding on and God's like pulling the rope out, right? And there's like the friction in the hands, and sometimes I'll let go, but then I like run after it and grab it again, right? And then I got to let it go. And it's a process, but it's moving in the right direction. And I have not been like, that was a mistake. Like God is so faithful to fill in the voids with better things.
Yeah.
And the better things are the things that are building His kingdom.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the things I loved, sports consumption, not participation.
Yeah.
Because I still play basketball. That's different. The like hiking, backpacking stuff, my schedule, and I don't even remember what the fourth one was right now. What'd I say?
I'm trying to remember too.
Doesn't matter. We can go back and watch.
We can go back, yeah.
But the things I love, like they aren't building God's kingdom.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, seek first the kingdom and all of this will be added.
Yeah.
And it's true. When I actually live that way, it's richer.
Yep.
But the devil tells me that if I'm going to give this thing up, there will be a gap in my life. And it does feel that way at first. It's like, well, what am I like? I need that thing. And so I would start there. I think what it's done for my relationship with Rachel and in our marriage is it's done two things. One, she knows that God is first. And that gives her a lot of confidence and trust that like she doesn't have to be my conscience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, cause she sees those things in me and she wants to fix them. And there's times where she's not very good at like not saying the thing and she says it and I don't receive it. And then she's like, I want you to change right now.
Yeah.
But like when she sees me changing and surrendering these things and she knows that God's working in my heart, then she can go, I trust it. And then that reduces those tensions of like her wanting to, you know, for lack of a better phrase, fix me,
Yeah.
you know, and not, and she feels better able to submit, right? Like in times where that's needed. And because she trusts that God, I'm submitted to the Lord. So that's like the biggest blessing is that, right? Like there's just way less tension in like the like interpersonal conflicts that we have and like the ways that we view and understand things. I think secondarily, it's put us in this like we're on the same team moving in the same direction. Especially with like the schedule thing. It's like we have 5 kids. Not she has 5 kids sometimes and then I have 5 kids sometimes. It's like we have 5 kids all the time.
Yeah.
And so like start there. What does that look like for our schedules? Like my job is not my job and my career. It's like we have this family, what best serves. And so now we're on a mission together versus me telling her like, hey, no, this is the career I'm building and chasing and pursuing. How can we fit you and the kids into it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like a subtle change that is a total paradigm shift at the same time, right? Of like the way to process life. And so there's this like trust that she inherently has because of my surrender to the Lord and this missional alignment of what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah, I think those 2 points are huge in terms of the one, you're submitted to the Lord.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have to be the one that fixes it for you. And the same you would say about her. She's submitted to the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't have to be the one.
And trust it.
And I think that in relationship is huge because then there can maybe be something that you see
Yeah.
and you can go to the Lord with it. And it
Start
doesn't
there.
mean that you aren't open in communication with your spouse. That's not what you mean at all in
No.
that. And
Talk
I know
a lot.
Yeah, I know. You talk a lot. You're very open with each other, but that you can trust the Lord with it because she's submitted and you're submitted. So then you can actually walk towards the Lord together. And really in a relationship, from what I see, coming from the other side of it falling apart, is that really it's about you walking towards the Lord together. And as you walk towards the Lord together, he's going to bring you closer, you know, in that relationship because he brought you together because you follow the Lord better together than apart. That's really what.
That is, so when I was engaged or not engaged, thinking about getting engaged, we fought all the time.
Yeah.
And it was because she was like, I want you to see it this way. She was kind of relentless. And then I was also stubborn and like, no, this is the way I came from a home where conflict was not present, at least not shown, right? It wasn't like on the surface. It was suppressed or it was passive or whatever. She came from a home where her mom punched her brother in the face, right? Like it was like conflict was a normal thing. And so she's like, this is fine and healthy. And I'm like, this is broken.
Yeah.
I don't think this is good. But then when I would sit with the Lord on it and be like, what do I do? Like, do I end this relationship? It was like, well, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I looked more like Jesus in my relationship with her because of the like refining that was happening. And it was like, well, why would I run from that other than to just feel more comfortable?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, my goal in this life is to look and feel like to be more like Jesus. And if that's happening in this relationship, I need to stay the course. Yeah. And so that was like my whole point. At that point on, it was like, okay, this is why obviously I loved her and like other things that come with it. But that was the primary motivation, was like, this is a way that God has used to help me like be and act more like Jesus. And it's true. You know, it is exactly what's happening is like, and it was funny at our wedding, a few of the people that gave speeches, it was like, Dan's changed. You know, it was like, and it's like, I laughed about it because it was like, I knew it was true.
Yeah.
Everyone knew it was true.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like such a refining process.
Yeah. And in a good way, you had changed. Yeah.
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 Yeah. They were happy about the
Yeah,
change.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we should change when we're with the person that we love because you're going to be refined. That's a good thing. And we'll just end it on this piece. The thing that you bring up there is the discomfort.
Yeah.
Like you guys were arguing all the time.
It was terrible.
It was
sometimes.
not fun.
Oh, it was so bad.
Yeah, but there's also joy, and you did love her, and all of those things, and it's grown deeper as you guys have entered into marriage and grown. How many years now?
We'll be 9 in March.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, but in that process, we think that it should just be comfortable. It should just be good. Like peace and joy from the Lord. We're just going to be good. Things are fine.
Yeah.
It's like,
Conflict
no, the refining
is a sign of problems.
Yeah.
This is broken.
No, we're sinful human beings that are constantly being refined, and God is chipping away. Like that doesn't feel good. The rope, when you're grabbing onto it and burning your hands as He's pulling it out, like that doesn't feel good.
And you're like, God, you're not loving me. You're hurting my hands.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I am.
Yeah, like if you let go, it wouldn't hurt as bad.
Right. Totally.
It's like, and that's also another true thing. But I think when you talk about the things that you gave up, and there was some struggle in giving those things up, that there is discomfort in giving up the things that you care about. Mm-hmm. There's going to be discomfort in that, but there is a different level of joy and dependence, and just that you had said that. I'm trying to remember what you had said in terms of when you gave those things up, and you did it out of that heart. Eventually, it was like, well, I don't miss them. Mm-hmm. I don't miss them because there's something better.
Yeah.
There's something better, and I think that's I run a business on social media, and I don't have social media on my phone. I remember when the Lord was like, "Hey, you need to not have that on your phone. It's distracting you." Well, I got to post. I can't. Like, I have to do this. No. And you know what it brings? I'm not on my phone as much.
Yeah.
And I'm actually spending time with Him. And it's the same thing when I'm struggling or I'm anxious and I just want to run to my phone, or I want to go watch a basketball game, or I love sports too.
Yeah.
And the Lord's, go on a walk with me. Leave your phone here. Go on a walk with me. I don't really want to do that. Mm-hmm. That's uncomfortable. But every time that I choose to do it, it's better.
I'm always like, why did I not want to do this?
Yeah.
I want to do this. And then I'm finished that time with the Lord. I'm like, I'm going to do this again tomorrow. This is the best thing I could have ever done.
Yeah.
And then like I get to it the next day. I'm like, I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, there's always this tension and fight in it.
Well, joy and peace are on the other side of the things that we don't want to do.
A lot of the time.
And with the Lord. Let's be clear in that. But many times it's that. I mean, I don't know, this is a little beside the point of what we're talking about, but one of the things that the Lord asked me to do when I first came back to Him was just spend time with Him every day, read the Bible every day. Well, the thing that He's been clear on with me is that in the relationship, it's a relationship, right? So there's going to be times with your wife where you don't want to spend time with her. There are going to be times where she definitely doesn't want to spend time with you, right?
You don't say that with so much assertion,
Hey, I'm the divorce guy, so hey, I got some rain. Yeah. But there's going to be those times. And it's the same thing with the Lord. Now, the Lord always wants to be with us, but there's going to be times where we don't want to spend time with Him. And that's just human. But those days that we choose to do it, so I spend time in the Word every day for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever. And I don't say that in some kind of prideful. I say that in a way of like, this is why I'm learning to know the Lord, right? I'm starting to know the Lord. But there are many days where I did not want to do it. And there's many days where I get done with reading the Word and I go, I don't know any of the things that I just read. Like my mind was absent. It was somewhere else. I don't know. But those days, the days that we choose to do that, on those days are the ones that bring the days where I'm hearing from the Lord, I'm peaceful, I'm calm, but it's the consistency of being with Him. It's not consistency itself, it's consistency of being with Him.
Yeah.
And when we spend that time with Him consistently, and we do that same thing with Rachel. It's like there's days where you want to watch sports.
Yeah.
There's days where you want to do those things. There's days where you want to go on hikes. But when you choose to do what she asks, what she needs, it brings those other things.
Well, it's interesting, right? I know you said you want to finish, so I'll just say, like, choosing the Lord, or say it a better way, when you don't choose God, you are like, we think that we can be neutral,
Yeah.
but you're actually choosing not God, right? There is something else that you are choosing.
Yeah.
And I think we just aren't aware of that.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times we're like, oh, I didn't like choose that thing that had to do with the Lord, whether it's reading our Bible or going to church or like having a conversation with someone, obeying what he put on our heart. Like I didn't choose it. And then we just stop there. But the reality is that in not choosing that, we did choose something else, and we don't do the work to figure out what that was and why. And it's dangerous to think. And Jesus doesn't let us do this. If you read the things that Jesus says, it's black and white. There's no middle ground. You know, if you're not for me, you're against me.
Yeah.
I came to bring a sword. Like this, there is a very clear dichotomy. And when we don't choose God, we are not just staying where we are. We are moving away from him. We are not choosing God and choosing something else. And so it's like, what is it? And why is that greater than the Lord?
Yeah.
You know, choices are a declaration.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound prideful for you to say, like, I chose the Lord.
Yeah.
Because, like, the cost that God puts in front of us is our life.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's worth choosing. He's worth choosing. And it's like, praise the Lord that you've been able to choose the Lord and like continue to do that. And he will meet you there, right? Like, not every time in like the way we want it, but he's there.
Yeah.
You know? So
That's good.
Yeah.
I think we're going to end there. And this was on ownership, so we went a few different directions. This is how this podcast is going to go. So if you enjoy that, just come in here. We'll
Buckle up.
There'll be some truth.
Yeah.
But it'll be different directions. It's fun. So it's pretty cool to be here and do this with you every week and
dude.
just enjoying it. So thanks for being here with us. Just a couple of things as we end here. If you're on YouTube, we do have a True Roots community. I'd love for you to be a part of it. It's a free community. There's a belief matrix in there, dispelling lies, replacing it with truth, that I'll send you once you sign up for that group. The link's in the bio on YouTube, and then the link's in the description on Apple Podcasts. Please like and subscribe in both those places. We would love that. And we'll catch you next week.
Have a good week.